I am a weaver of connection to self, the land, to community and each other, of mind to heart, of feminine and masculine, of magic into all moments and opportunities. Thank you for that beautiful and resonant introduction, Daniella, and a big welcome to New Earth Podcast.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to see what unfolds this evening.
So today we have with us Daniella Princi, who is a life coach, psychologist, heart activator, among any other things. So I'm going to let you to introduce yourself to start with, Daniella.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Daniella. I'm based in Australia. I am a psychologist working holistically in the consciousness, in energetics. The weaver is my word. I'm weaving all sorts of modalities into the work that I do. And yes, it's all about helping people really connect to themselves, their truth, their heart, and from that space navigate their world from the inside out. I'm also a published author with the book Living from the Inside Out. So yeah.
And I was checking out your website earlier, and some words really spoke to me: connecting you to you. I thought that was very powerful because we have become disconnected from ourselves. So how can we reclaim that reconnection, with we're still kind of connected with our minds, but to our heart and to our body. And that's very much the embodiment process. And today we are going to be talking about embodying sovereignty in the new earth.
Absolutely.
So how do you see that unraveling, that unpacking of that process?
I could speak to this for days. Essentially, for me, just taking a step back, it's acknowledging how through many millennia, well, actually, no, probably not millennia, but for many, many decades, we've been disconnected through societal conditioning of how things should be. And, in terms of our roles, even nowadays, witnessing women, mothers, trying to do it all and then burning out, or people coming to see me once their kids have left home and they don't know who they are because their whole life has been consumed by giving to everybody else. So for me, it's learning to understand that it's okay. The first step is to know that it's okay to start looking after you first, because that's one of the first things that I get is a lot of guilt. There's guilt around taking time out for yourself. There's guilt around having a break. There's guilt around spending money on yourself, whatever the guilt is, and helping people to recognize that when we can fill our cup, we are no longer operating from an empty vessel. And so we can come from a space of overflowing. And when we give, the more we give to ourselves, the more we can then share and give to everybody else. So I wrote a course a few years ago called Selfish is the New Selflessness, because I believe that we have to be a little bit selfish to then be more selfless. It doesn't work the other way around anymore because people are burning out and it's just not resonating anymore. And so from that space, then learning to become your own master, the master of your reality, your truth, the life you're creating from you, and not from what society says, not from what that person says, not from what that person's doing or whatever it might be. So it's learning, to come back within and knowing what that is, what that looks like. And I believe the time we're in at the moment, the astrology, the cosmic support, all the things are really supporting us to start living that true north they speak to, living your soul's destined aligned paths, knowing your truth, living your truth, speaking your truth. And from that space also then knowing how to really ground and anchoring so you can maintain that and not get distracted by, or what's the word I'm trying to feel into, but like we can often get taken off path by the external. So how do we master ourselves and our path? are maintaining that inner sovereignty and inner alignment to our soul's truth and direction and purpose.
I think you've raised a really important point about really allowing ourselves to be selfish in the nicest possible way. You know,
Yes.
we don't need to we don't need to be
Yes.
unpleasant with that, but just with our time and our boundaries, really, and what we can and can't do, because there are just so many demands on us in the world that we're living in. It's just not possible to say yes to everything, or do, you know, from taking the kids to a class, or, you know, whatever it might be. You know, it's like the more spacious we can create our lives, the better. So giving ourselves permission to take that foot off the accelerator. I actually work with someone who does hair analysis, and it's been really interesting because he said that he's just seeing more and more cases, particularly in the last few years, of burnout. And it used to start in the 20s, you know, sort of a decade ago, but sadly he's seeing it in teenagers and even babies now coming in with burnout, because the levels of depletion in the mothers are so great, and then there's not the nutrition in the food, etc. So how can we start to reverse all of that and start to refill our cups and replenish? So I'm sure you've got lots to speak to on this topic.
Yes, 100%. And there's many things we as individuals can do, but I also believe that this is a shift in humanity as well, to learn to shift their own paradigms and beliefs and stories and narratives around this. So when we as a community can come together and encourage and support each other, I love the word space. You said space, to create that space for ourselves. That is very much the world I live in. So if we were coming together as a community to support that, it's going to be a lot easier for people to do that than them feeling that they're in isolation trying to do that. But again, also we do have our individual, this is all about self-responsibility and daily practices. You know, that's a very small starting step, but the way you start your day, you know, taking a few moments out just to breathe and connect in, connect to your heart, set an intention for the day, practice some gratitude before you even get out of bed, because a lot of people get out of bed stressing, worrying, negative thinking about what's to go, like, oh, I've got to get the kids breakfast, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I'm not going to have time, oh, I don't want to go to work, and all that. Not so helpful way of thinking. So before you even get out of bed, you can shift the way you even focus your mind.
And then it sets the day up for success, really, doesn't it? You've programmed your day with what you would like to have happen, really. And often then we draw that towards ourselves.
And you're going to interact with your family at a much better level, because you are going to be in a slightly higher vibration and frequency than if you were in that overwhelmed space that potentially many of us, you know, might start our day. Also, some basic stretching to get the blood and oxygen flowing through our bodies and our brains, maybe even some endorphins. And, you know, granted, I know a lot of moms say to me, I don't have time, I've got a 3-year-old. Fair enough. But there's also the possibility of getting up, dealing with your 3-year-old, and then setting up a space to have 5 or 10 minutes. Go sit outside with your cup of tea. They can run around on the grass, and you can just take that 5 minutes just to redirect your mind and do some stretching. Have the baby involved with that. And I'm all for allowing them to watch 5 minutes of something, you know, some musical show or something on iTunes or YouTube or something, just to give you that break. Again, I think we're trying to do it all perfectly, and, you know, without this and without that, and all these rules, and it's just creating too much stress.
But
I mean,
one of the things that you spoke about earlier that really resonated was this, you know, looking at it from a community level. And, you know, we don't need to do it all ourselves, you know, and if we can shift into that mindset of support, it's going to change our worlds, and changing our beliefs around that as well. That's one of the things you spoke about. So that giving ourselves permission to receive is absolutely key, you know, because if we just feel that we've just got to give, particularly as a mother, I know you work with a lot of mums, You know, it's how can we then replenish our cup? So, you know, I've got a lovely example of when we moved to Portugal, because we had a time when we couldn't find a good school in our local area. So we were literally trying to renovate our house, homeschool our kids, you know, and
Wow.
it was a real moment for me of like, you know, like hand everything over that we can, you know, anything we can hand it over to someone that really wants to do that, you know, that's their purpose.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, in these times, there are a lot of single parents, and Australia in particular, I don't know about over Europe way, but there's a lot of, it's multicultural. There's a lot of people from overseas. So I work with a lot of single moms or even partnered moms whose partners are working, but there's no family support. And so this is coming back to the community, even creating a women's circle, finding some like-minded women that you can maybe, you know, I'll have your kid for a morning, you have my kid, you know, and start creating that and stop trying to be the martyr. And coming back to that word receiving, another powerful, powerful word. I had a older mom come to me. She think her kids were grown up, but she quit her job because she had been verbally abused by her boss. And she was mortified. She said, look, my partner's having to pay for me and I'm not contributing. And I said, just stop. Where has society gone where as a woman, as a provider of the home, as a carer and a nurturer, we cannot receive from our partner to support us in a time of need? And how does your partner feel being able to actually support you? The whole masculine, feminine roles in society have been absolutely screwed up, and to the point where men are scared to provide because they feel that they're going to get shut down. Women feel that they have to keep providing themselves and they can't receive. So I love that you brought that up, because it's a very powerful practice I work with a lot of my clients on, is learning to practice receiving. Because how can we then expect to, for me, a beautiful saying is, you know, the way we treat ourselves sets the tone, like, or our relationship with ourselves sets the tone for all other relationships. So if we can't love ourselves, how can we expect others to love us? If we can't receive, how can we expect to create a reality in a life that we want to create, which requires us to receive? Like, you know, it just doesn't flow. It doesn't work. It's not in alignment with the way we have the potential to create, manifest, alchemize in our life, because we are so disconnected. So that brings us back to that whole disconnection thing. So it's so multi-layered.
Yeah. And in your introduction or poem or quote, you know, whatever you'd like to call it, you know, I am a weaver, you speak about weaving the masculine and the feminine. And it's like both of those roles have, to a certain degree, become broken and toxic, you know, because of societal pressures. So how can we start to integrate both within ourselves and bringing out that divine aspect, you know, where we integrate, you know, the giving and the receiving, the mind and the heart, you know, the heart being the more feminine, the mind being the more masculine, you know, and all those different qualities to come into that holistic, you know, that, you know, the weaver of our own reality, you know, we weave in the qualities that we want to draw in, really.
Yeah. There may be some work to be done around each of those those energies or archetypes. But in essence, for me, the way I see it is the masculine is the container, let's say. Okay, so as a single mom, there is a container, a structure that is needed. So maybe a daily routine to keep on top of things. When I'm going to pay the bills, when I'm going to clean the house, getting the kids out in time, picking them up. So there's a structure, there's a container. But for me, it's that balance between absolute control and being safe and comfortable to flow and weave through that. So this is my structure, But today, you know what? And so I'm going to weave in something else here. For women, we've become disconnected from the flow of our bodies. We're not men. We're not here to live a 24-hour day cycle. We're here to live a 28-day cycle. So learning to weave and flow with our cycles through the month as well, or, you know, in menopause or post-menopause, maybe flowing more with the moon cycles. So if I've got the structure, but today actually feels like a rest day and just a bit of a self-loving day, I can do that. So it's about weaving in that feminine flow in that masculine structure. That's just an example of how I play in that space. And that's not to say that, you know, even men, or it's so tricky when we're speaking masculine, feminine, man, woman, you know, we as women or as men have both, and masculine and feminine energies, but I'm just trying to speak here in terms of men now. Men also have the need sometimes to be held by the feminine, but that's not in a controlling or a weak way. They might be unwell. So how do we nurture our man back to health? And then so he receives from us, and then we step back, and then he can go back to providing, you know. So it's this dance, but we've lost that dance because it's become this power struggle or this tug of war between who needs to be on top or who needs to be wearing the pants or whatever. I don't know what phrases you have over there, but you know, she wears the pants in this relationship. Like that's quite a common thing here
it's
in
part of
Australia.
our expression as well.
Yeah. So I've gone on a bit of a tangent, but I trust that makes sense.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, ultimately these power struggles, ultimately it's giving our power away, isn't it? Because ultimately the whole journey into embodied sovereignty is reclaiming that, you know, that power, but not power in the old model, you know, in terms of the competitiveness, but power in terms of personal power, of really knowing what we want to create and manifest, and you know, that space of being sovereign over our own world and reality. So it's a different kind of power. You know, we don't need to compete for that. We have it within ourselves. So how can we step out of that externalization of power, which is ultimately giving power away, and really start to reclaim it in our bodies, in our knowing?
Multi-layered again. The first thing that's dropping in, and this comes back to what we were saying before around getting to know who we are. So beyond being a parent or a partner, who are you, Sarah, as an individual? What are your values? What lights you up? What are you here to bring every day to the world for yourself? And getting to know that version of you and that aspect of you. That's one part, because many people don't even know that. I'll have a mom come see me and I'm like, what are your hobbies and interests? And they look at me blankly. So it's getting to know those aspects of you that if you just stood there and like blasted yourself out, what are you sharing with the world? What are your gifts? What are your values? What do you love? What lights you up? As well as having the capacity to, there's something you said about giving your power away. So it's about learning to celebrate yourself. We often, again, part of societal conditioning is to seek external validation, actually from a young age, you know, looking for your parents to praise you, looking to your teachers to praise you. It's all external. We go somewhere to get healed. We go to this person to fix us. We go to this person to ask. It's all external. So it's learning to come within. And again, this comes back to the space we're in at the moment with the cosmic energies and all the things. Like we're really being supported in connecting with our own gifts, our own innate wisdom, our body wisdom, our intuition, and learning to trust that and play in that space. And I speak often recently around being childlike in your curiosity and joy in all the moments, and like, oh, I wonder what this means. I wonder what this is going to bring. So you're kind of exploring within self, not asking somebody else, what does this mean? So that's another level, right? It's about knowing and trusting and connecting in with yourself in that way. Another aspect is no longer suppressing your emotions. For me, this is a massive aspect of sovereignty. When we can feel, and I use the word empowered because it's like when we can feel empowered in our capacity to allow ourselves to feel emotions, allow ourselves to sit in and not marinate and wallow in an emotion, but to pause and to witness it and to allow it and to see it and to feel it and then to alchemize it through us. I've got this process I use. I'm sure there's many other processes out there to then neutralize it. And when we have the capacity and the empowered belief in ourselves to do that, we don't get distracted by the fear and all the chaos and all the overwhelm being thrown out around us. So that for me is a massive part of internal sovereignty. And that comes back to what I said earlier about taking responsibility for self, that self-mastery, because it's from that space then that we can stand in our sovereign, soul-aligned, true part of who we are.
We spoke about you maybe taking everyone through a process today. As you've been speaking about, a process that you do, I'm just wondering if now might be a really good moment to drop into that, or if there's some other things that you feel are important to say before leading people into that.
I can take you through, we call it the Sourcefulness process. It's a process that I learned about 7 years ago with my mentor, and it's been the most empowering process because it's allowed me to no longer fear experiences or emotions. It can be very confronting, and I have sometimes sat in this with ugly crying for a good 45 minutes to an hour, but obviously we don't have the space and time for that. So I'll take you through the mechanics, I guess, of it, and we'll do a quick version of it. So I invite the listeners, when you're doing this, to either press pause if you need more space, or to reach out, and yeah, I can take you through the actual process. Sometimes having the support, actually, yeah, like having practices to ground yourself and support yourself around that is probably really important if you're going into deeper stuff. But if you're dealing with superficial frustrations and overwhelm at home, it's okay. But if you want to dive deeper into some of the bigger stuff going on, I invite you, in actual fact, encourage you to seek support around that. But it's just such a beautiful time because the timeline that we're in, the unity consciousness that's coming through, the higher frequencies that are coming through, the more we move density and emotion out of our physical bodies, we can hold a higher frequency. And this is partly also why I'm so passionate about doing this work, because emotion is energy in motion, and we've just suppressed so much of it. So the more we can move it and allow it to flow through us, then it allows us to raise our frequency and our vibration around that. So yeah, let's give it a go and see what unfolds.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. And if anyone's driving or doing an activity that's not really super suitable, then do press pause and return to this at a time that's more suitable.
Definitely. You can, once you get the hang of this, we are multidimensional. I've done it quickly whilst driving when I'm feeling frustrated on the roads, for example, but that's a very, like I said, superficial, quick way to just allow the emotion to flow. But definitely to do this for the first time, to dive into an emotion, yeah, you want to create space. So with anything, I suppose it's honoring you to create a space to do any of this kind of work. So be it your room, have a candle or something, wherever you do it. But yeah, give yourself the space, honor yourself enough to do that. But yeah, let's give it a go. We'll start with grounding. I have my chalice bowl here. Hopefully the sound's okay. So I just invite you to close your eyes. And with every breath, just allowing yourself to completely arrive in this moment, calling all aspects of you across all timelines, dimensions, continuums, and realms, be fully present in this moment, right here, right now. You might imagine roots growing out of the base of your feet. So allow those roots to grow deep down into the earth, feeling really held and supported. And with your next inhale, breathing up from those roots, up through your feet, your legs, your body, all the way to your heart, breathing into your heart, expanding your heart, and then exhaling back down. So repeating the cyclical grounding breath a few times, really anchoring you to this moment, breathing up from those roots all the way to your heart and back down again. And so now I invite you to scan your body. Somewhere in your body where you may be feeling an emotion, and I'm just going to use a generic emotion of overwhelm. Maybe scan your body for overwhelm. Where are you feeling it physically in your body? Often we feel the density physically. Sometimes it's the physical or the emotional. One of those two are usually the strongest. So just feel overwhelm, where that's coming up in your body. There may be a tightness in your chest. There may be tension behind or between your shoulder blades, maybe a churning in your stomach. Just allow yourself to witness that overwhelm. And whether you use the word source, divine creator, God, whatever your point of creation is, I'm going to use the word divine source. So I invite you to share, divine source, this is how it feels as a human to feel overwhelmed. And turn that feeling up, turn that sensation up, allow it to be felt in the body. And with every breath, as you exhale, allow it to be breathed out of your body, and almost imagining a container outside of your physical body. Allow the energy to be breathed out into this container. With every inhale, breathe into that space. You might visualize it as a color, a sensation. You might see ribbons. As you exhale, see those ribbons, see those bits of energy being pulled out of your physical body into that external container. Turning it up, breathing up from your toes all the way up your body. And then exhaling it out into that container. And again, this is a part you may want to pause it to give yourself a lot of time to keep moving if it's a really big emotion. Sometimes the emotions are layered, so something else might come up as well. So allow yourself to witness that. We then move into the emotional body. So where in your emotions feel that emotion of overwhelm, sometimes it might have cleared with the physical, but there may still be some emotional overwhelm coming up. Tearfulness, again, feeling, sensing the color, how it looks, where it's being felt as an emotion, breathing into it, turning it up, dial it up to 110%. And as you exhale it, breathing it out into that external container. The idea as we're doing this is we're going to be neutralizing the emotion. So sometimes if you've had an experience of having a big cry and you've got that sort of neutral feeling at the end of it, that's where we want to get to. And then you might scan your mental body. You know, where in your mind have you got thoughts or beliefs about overwhelm? I can't do this. I can't cope. This is too hard. Whatever thoughts around overwhelm that are coming up, allow them to be witnessed. And with every exhale, allow them to be moved out into that external container. Remembering that you're safe and you're held, seeing yourself anchored and grounded and held by the earth. Again, pressing pause if you need more space for this. And then your final energetic body, just scanning your whole energetic body for anywhere that you have a little bit of overwhelm left. You might see it as a bit of a gray space, or even if you can't verbalize it or name it, just whatever you're feeling, seeing, sensing in your energy body, allow it to be witnessed, breathe into it, and with your exhale, breathing it out into this external container. So now imagine your heart kind of like a bath plug. You're going to open your heart up and pour that container through your heart. So not back into your body, through the front of your heart, out through the back of your heart, all the way back to the point of creation, to that point, that spark of source creation where it first came from. Kind of like a vortex, or like water running out through the bottom of the bath. See it flowing through your heart, through the front, out the back, emptying that container through, offering it all back up to source with love, with gratitude, allowing it to be cleared out of your field. And as it's clearing, take a moment to feel into your physical body temple again, and noticing and witnessing the bit of space you might have created. Maybe there's a few voids that are that have been created as you've moved some of this density out. And paying attention also to your body, it may require some movement. So it might be organically moving. That's okay. The somatic movement is very powerful. And so now we're going to close that bath plug. And we're going to open your heart the other direction, but I visualize this more like a rose, petals opening up. And you're now going to receive back from source. This is the alchemizing, transmuting aspect of this journey. You're going to receive that energy back from source, but alchemized to your highest potential. So calling back in through the back of your heart from that point of creation, through that rose into your body, what you're needing in this moment. Again, visualizing it, seeing it, sensing it. I always see sparkly liquid energy flowing through into me as whatever you need it to be. It might be love, it might be courage, it might be compassion, whatever you need in this moment. Allow yourself to receive. There's that receive word again, back from source, what you need. Allow it to fill and flow into those voids, activating the cells of your body, even allowing it to flow into the space between your cells. That void space is so powerful and potent. It holds so much wisdom and memory for us. Allow it to be flooded with this beautiful energy you're receiving back from source, and this alchemized magic. Feeling your heart expand. Whatever you're feeling, seeing, sensing in this moment, just allow it to be witnessed and acknowledged. And once again, just taking a few of those grounding cyclical breaths just to make sure that you're really fully here. So feeling those roots in the ground, breathing up through the roots, back up to your heart, back down again. And then when you're ready, open your eyes. How was that? It was very rushed, but you get the concept, you get the gist.
That was incredible. Thank you. I do have a few questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
Because I'm really familiar with that process, you know, the first part of it as a way of working with emotions, you know, looking for a color, a shape, texture as a way of connecting in and then transmuting. I loved how you'd taken it through the different levels. That was something new, and I thought that was fabulous. I really loved that. I'd never experienced the bringing it back through the heart before, and I just wondered if that's kind of an addition personal to you, or if there's some reasoning for kind of bringing it back through the heart that
Yeah.
way.
So that's what I was saying. I've never experienced this process. I've never found it anywhere else. It was a process that my mentor received through her higher guidance. And the whole reason being that with a lot of breath, and I hope I'm answering your question in this way, with a lot of breath work and emotional release work, I don't like to use that word, but the energy is still in our field. So the concept of then returning it back to source is we're actually clearing your field so that nobody else can come and walk in, or it's completely transmuting and alchemizing, because that's still your energy. That's why I meant like we're giving it back to source, and then we're receiving it back, but kind of like clean, like it's been through one of those car wash cleaner things, you know, and we're getting it back. And for me, and I guess my friend, is everything's more powerful through the heart, right? It's the highest frequency and space to work in. So that's why we do it that way. You could potentially bypass that and just in the moment just go source this and like just hand it back up to
That's
source.
how I work with it. In my work, I ask for it to be transmuted and handed back to source, and then bringing in the love.
Yeah.
But I guess everyone, it's good this conversation has come up, because everyone can tune into what's right for them, you know,
Yeah.
when working with it, to see whether that feels good through the heart, or whether just to ask that it be transmuted by
Yeah,
the violet
absolutely. It
flame,
does.
or back to source.
Yeah, however works for you. The whole idea, though, is that you clear it out of your field. A lot of, like I said, breath work practices don't really do that. They might do it
Yes.
themselves, I'm not sure. But this is for you to be empowered to do this yourself, coming back to that inner sovereignty and not needing to depend on others. But yeah, it just
Thank
feels.
you. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And another
Welcome.
question is, because you gave us the overwhelm to look for, you know, if someone was just using this as a practice, as a part of their daily practice, what would they start with? Obviously, if you're aware that you're feeling overwhelm, or, you know, an emotion, then that's a great place to start. But if they're not particularly connected with anything, but they wanted to do it as a daily practice, what would you recommend people do?
When I learned this, what I did was I set myself the challenge, if that's the right word, probably is, yeah. It is a bit of a challenge to get into this, to do it every night before I went to bed. So I go to bed and I just ask myself, what's come up for me today? Because often the reason we suppress our emotions is we don't have time in the moment to navigate them. So if you know, I'm just going to like park this because I'm going to deal with it tonight, that's a really great way of doing it. Obviously, if you can do it in the moment, that's the most powerful. But if you can't, we do it later. So then I'd go to bed and I'd say, okay, what came up for me today? Oh yeah, this happened in town today. This is how it feels to feel frustrated, or whatever could have come up. And then I actually slept amazing because I've cleared my field. I don't have all that stuff going on. And it just got easier and easier. And I actually looked forward to doing it at the end of every day. I did mention, and I'll mention it again, that when we are ready, I do invite you to practice this and get comfortable with it before you go into the bigger stuff. Because when you do, often layered emotions will come through. So I've worked with clients where they were starting with being angry and disrespected by someone in their current life, and then it just dropped them into a trauma when they were younger, and it was massive and unexpected. But that's the power this can have when you really allow yourself and open yourself to experience this. Because that's the other thing. I've had a lot of clients that will kind of do it, they're scared to really feel those emotions, and understandably. So get comfortable with the process and know that you're safe, because if you've ever had a massive cry, you know you get to the end eventually. But the release and the purge, the clearing and the healing that happens from this on the other side is just phenomenal. And I hope I've got time to quickly share this. I just want to explain give you a metaphor as to why this works. When we suppress something, the way I see it, it's like we have a hook that we've got in our bodies with those little barbs, you know, like the fishing hook have those barbs. So say, for example, you've suppressed pain and anger, and then something happens in your current reality where you experience anger. So as the anger is moving through you, it then hooks onto the anger that's already there. But that's now hooked to all those other parts of anger that you've experienced through your life. So in that moment, you may experience that whole lifetime of anger, and you have this massive overreaction because you dropped your coffee. I don't know, depending on the situation. So the more we do this, the more we neutralize it. The way I see it is that those hooks and barbs are getting cleared. So eventually that anger can move through you, and you can be like, oh, this is making me angry. And you can see it and witness it, and it keeps moving through without any hook or attachment, because there's nothing there to do it anymore. So I just wanted to explain that to the audience as to why we're doing
you know,
this.
if people do start working with this, and you know, they do find that it starts to lead to deeper stuff, I would always recommend, you know, seeking the help of someone like Daniella or myself. You know, we both work with emotional release. Because of that reason, it can start to bring up a lot of family history, even ancestral, you know.
Absolutely.
But
not to fear it, because and I'm just hearing, so I'm not an astrologer by any stretch of the imagination, but this year, for some reason, the astrology has been calling to me. So I've been paying attention, and there is so much happening at the moment that is bringing up our blocks and things that we're resisting, and things that are holding us back, because we are at a time of stepping into our fullest truth. And so I encourage you and I invite you to lean in and embrace it, because as scary as it may be, the magic and alchemy you can create on the other side, I feel, is just going to be beyond our expectations, and allowing us to enter in our higher timeline paths. And just, there is just so much potential. You can feel it. So yeah, it's exciting.
Thank you so much. That's really inspirational. Any last points you'd like to make before we finish up?
Oh, Sarah, there's so much I feel we haven't spoken into. So I did talk about the grounding. I really invite you to do that every day. It really helps us to anchor in and feel held and supported and aligned, so that from that space we can encounter our day and our world around us. The other aspects I haven't quite touched on, but I brought it into that cyclical breath, is connection to your heart. When we can witness everything through our heart, it allows us to maintain the higher frequency and allow us to see or have a divine understanding or understanding of what's playing out around us. And so we can witness our child having a temper tantrum, but with love, and not get drawn into their drama and chaos. We can hold our frequency and witness them. Or having an argument, it allows us to stay in our truth, create the space again, to then come back and navigate. So the grounded heart connection for me are paramount in my day-to-day living, then along with movement and everything else. So that's probably coming back to the self-mastery and that inner sovereignty that we were speaking about before, is another key. There are a few, but I really had to put that one in.
From our heads to our heart, and ultimately integrating all of it. But at the moment, that heart energy awakening is so important.
Yes. So if it's okay to share, I do have that free Earth Star activation, which does do the grounding, connection to the heart, and a bit of an integration. It's just the intro aspect. Beautiful. Because so that could be a beautiful, it's a 7-day free challenge, grounding challenge, but obviously I invite you to do it longer than 7 days. But that can help you also coming back to those daily practices and that self-mastery and that inner sovereignty. So that'll help you really activate the heart in that journey as well.
Thank you so much, Daniella. It's been absolutely beautiful connecting with you and talking with you today. And thank you everybody for listening, and do hit the subscribe button so you can enjoy some more New Earth podcasts. Many blessings.
Much love.